Hello. So the first two episodes of The Lightning Thief are out, and I'm gonna include reaction clips, and then I'm about to rewatch episode 2 and take some more in-depth notes and whatnot on my thoughts, so it's gonna be fun. So here's my reaction. Hey, Kara. Owls. What's wrong? Is that Juniper? That's not Juniper. Glorious. Sunshine. Get up. Why is he big? Why is he big? Oh, we're cargo pants. Okay, so that was my reaction to episode 2. I am now going to, of course, read you my page of notes. Obviously, starting with all of my complaints, all of being 2 complaints, and then everything I loved about the episode, all my favorite quotes and little details and stuff, and then themes that I think that they really hit hard and hit well on in this specific episode. So yeah, this is, what's it called? I become Supreme Lord of the Bathroom, that's what it's called. Interesting because no one actually says that in this episode, I'm pretty sure. Because like in the book, Luke is like, oh, hail Percy Jackson, Supreme Lord of the Bathroom, but like he doesn't actually say that in the episode, so like, who knows, but it's fine. Okay, my complaints for the episode, I have 2. My first complaint is just that I wish the training montage was slower. I think this episode was very fast-paced, and part of it is like, it's sort of a thing that like Percy has gone from school to school to school his entire life. He's never like found a place that accepted him and that he belonged, and then he's immediately moved on again, and I think that's like an important thing. And so the quickness of like him being at camp for like not a very long time, like as a viewer it's like, oh, that was very quick, but it's like supposed to be like that kind of, because it's supposed to feel like he's never, like he's found this place but then it's ripped away from him immediately. So like he's not supposed to spend that much time at camp, but just selfishly I would have loved literally like hours of just him like walking around camp. But whatever. So yeah, that's that. And then my second complaint, this is very specific, but I do wish that the Hermes cabin was more crowded, because in the book it was like this whole thing of like the Zeus cabin is completely empty, the Hera cabin completely empty, Artemis, who's the other one? Poseidon, duh. Those cabins are completely empty. And then like the Hermes cabin just takes all of these like extra unclaimed demigods of either like the minor gods or just like them not being claimed, and they're all shoved into this one cabin, and there's people like sleeping on the floor. Like, it's very overcrowded. There's not enough room for all these kids to like live properly. And I always thought that that was such, like, it was so subtle, but like such an effective way to show like the gods really just not caring at all about like what situation their kids are living in. Like, if they had just like claimed them, they could like be in different places. Or even like the kids of the minor gods, they don't even have cabins. Like, it's this whole thing, but I think it's really shown effectively through the Hermes cabin. The Hermes cabin being so crowded, but in the show it was like Percy still did sleep in a sleeping bag on the floor, which like I respect. So it was showing it a little bit, but it just like seemed like there was a lot of empty space in that cabin. So whatever, it doesn't really matter, but like would have been fun. Yeah, that's my only complaints from this episode. So moving on to everything I loved. So obviously this episode opened straight up with "You drool when you sleep." Perfect. It's not in the book. You drool when you sleep, and like Annabeth's introduction goes a little bit differently, because the part where Percy's like waking up in a daze in the infirmary is when Annabeth like comes at him, and she's like, "What do you know about the winter solstice or the summer solstice?" I'm sorry. And she's like, "What do you know about this lightning bolt?" And he's like, "What?" And then he falls back asleep. But in the show, during that part is when she did the whole "you drool when you sleep," but like I'm getting nitpicky. It doesn't matter because she said it. So yeah. Then he wakes up and he sees Grover, and he has like a little chat with Grover, and Grover's like, "Yeah, your mom's dead." And he's like, "Oh." And so then they go to talk to Mr. D. Percy doesn't know it's Mr. D yet, but they basically have a little conversation, and Percy's very, not to use the word sassy, but like, he's very sassy. Never mind. He's bickering with Mr. D, because he doesn't know that Mr. D is Dionysus. He just thinks he's some like random dude, and he's like, "Where's my dad?" And one of like such an amazing addition, Mr. D pretending to be Percy's dad, is so funny, and it literally caught me so off guard. I was like, it's so funny. I love it. And so like Mr. D is just like, "Son?" And Percy's like, "Dad?" And it's like he really believes him. It's so crazy. But yeah, Mr. D, you will always be famous. I love Mr. D in like The Lightning Thief, just like hates it there, but like by The Sun and the Star, and maybe it's just because of Nico. Mr. D, the only kid he likes is Nico. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, then Chiron shows up. There's this really funny shot of Chiron showing up, and Percy's just staring at him, obviously like as a horse, and Chiron just like stands in the doorway. It's really, really funny. I should make that a meme. It's really good. And then I honestly don't remember what they talk about. Oh, Percy and Chiron. Chiron's like, "Come on, Percy, he's just messing with you. Let's go take a walk around camp," in his like British accent or whatever. And so yeah, then they leave, and this is just something that I noted. Mr. D and Grover are like kind of an iconic duo. Not that they like each other, because they don't, but it's more of like a respect. Like Mr. Dionysus, like he like gives him, what did I just say, Mr. Dionysus? Not what I meant to say. But like Mr. D sort of like holds Grover to like a higher respect level than the other campers. Like when he's talking to him, he really like includes Grover in the conversation, whereas he like dismisses the campers. It's like I don't know. I just thought it was like a little interesting thing, because like Mr. D was like, when was it? I don't remember, but there's like this part where Mr. D is he's talking to Grover, and he's like, "Grover, like just don't worry about it." And I just love it. Anyway, so then Percy and Chiron are walking around camp, and this is something that I just want to talk about quickly. There is a Hercules statue in the center of camp. It's sort of in like a wheel formation. I can't remember. I'm like visualizing it in my head. The statue is in the center, but I don't know if it's the cabin surrounding it or if it's just like the different like strawberry field, archery range, like all that stuff. I don't know, but there's a Hercules statue. And I just found it very interesting because like Hercules is obviously like a demigod. He's like the demigod. And so kind of brings us back to the whole like not everyone who's a hero, or not everyone who looks like a hero is a hero, not everyone who looks like a monster is a monster. Because Hercules, I'm sure like at Camp Half-Blood, they're like, we all want to be like Hercules, be like so like great as Hercules. But then like they meet Hercules in the Mark of Athena, I think, maybe. And he's like, he's not all that. And so it's just interesting that like this whole thought of like Hercules being this great hero, and they're obviously like presented that idea at camp, but it's like not true. Not everyone who looks like a hero is a hero. So just an interesting detail. And then the cabins. The cabins, as I said before, should be more crowded. The Hermes cabin specifically, but dismissing that, they are gorgeous, and there's like open flames inside them. Like there's like a fire pit in the middle of the cabin, which personally wouldn't make that decision, but like it's gorgeous, and they're so like the architecture of them gorgeous. Yeah, and they're so like homey. Like it's like a shot of like all the cabins, and especially walking into the Hermes cabin, it's just all these kids hanging out. They're like playing games, they're on their bunks. It's so comfy. Yeah, and that's basically it. Chiron sort of just showing Percy around, getting him a bit more situated, and he introduces him to the whole Hermes cabin, and it's so like awkward because everyone in the Hermes cabin is like, okay, like new kid, whatever, and Percy's so embarrassed. It's so funny. Yeah, and then is this at this part? I actually don't remember when this is. I guess it's right now. It's here in my notes. But I feel like this is... I don't remember how it's transitioned into this scene, but Grover is then in the woods. And he goes into the Cloven Council's, like, little tree area. And I just have to say, it's gorgeous. Like, I need to live there. If I could live in the Cloven Council's little tree cult, girl, I would. Anyway, and he goes to ask them if it's possible that Sally Jackson is still alive after she dusted in the Minotaur fight. Yeah. Period. And then what happens? So he finds out that like, yes, she could still be alive. And he talks to Mr. D, and they're like, Chiron also might be there. I don't remember. But they're like, shut your mouth, like don't bring it up to Percy. And then we cut to Percy, and he's having another nightmare. Same spooky voice. This time we see the shadow figure again on a boat. Yeah. Again, I assume it's Kronos. He's just like saying spooky stuff to him. Yeah, and then he wakes up, and he's like on the floor of the Hermes cabin, and he like wakes up in a startle, I think, and everyone like looks at him weird, and then we get introduced to our favorite character, Luke. We are introduced to Luke. Luke basically comes over to him, and he's like, we all get nightmares here, it's part of being a demigod or whatever. And he's just like sort of like welcoming Percy in. It actually makes me so sick. Like, episode 8 is gonna be I'm so excited for episode 8, because it's gonna hit. It's gonna hit. After everything they did in this episode 8 is gonna hit. Basically, Luke sort of starts to show Percy around camp, And this is a change from the book, because in the book it was Annabeth that shows Percy around camp and is like his main guide there. But here I think it's Luke, and I think that is a great decision, because like it serves much more of a purpose here, having Luke show Percy around and having their bond grow rather than Percy and Annabeth, because their bond growing is a whole that can happen on the quest, you know what I mean? So I love that it's Luke showing him around, and he starts to talk to Percy about this whole thing of like glory and like, you know, you gotta like train to have all this glory and like have like an important name and all this stuff. And then Percy says something along the lines of like, yeah, so if I like win a bunch of battles and stuff and I get claimed, then no one will mess with me. And at the moment he says that, enter Clarisse, pushing him to the ground. Or she shoulder checks him to the ground. And like Dior, who is the actress who plays Clarisse, eats in this role. She ate everybody up this entire episode. She is so good. She has such a presence. She's so like, her little like smirk after she like pushes him to the ground. She's like, oh, like, sorry. It's so good. So yeah, we got our little Clarisse entrance here. She's a queen. And then basically, for a good part of this episode, it's Luke sort of showing Percy around camp. They do a bunch of different, like, they go to the forge, they go to the archery range, they do other stuff. He's basically just, it's a little montage of Luke being like a big bro, like doing all this stuff. It's very cute. Also, mention this, Chris Rodriguez is in this entire montage. Like, Chris Rodriguez. See, I reread The Lightning Thief in preparation for the season, but I haven't gotten to the other books yet, but I will soon. But Chris Rodriguez is in Sea of Monsters. He's one of the people that's on Luke's boat, the Princess Andromeda. And then, if I'm not mistaken, in the Battle of the Labyrinth, there's like a whole story about Chris Rodriguez escaping and like going into the labyrinth and then coming back out and like finding his way to camp and like being like, he's like gone insane because of the labyrinth. It's like a whole thing. And I think that he dates Clarisse, if I'm not mistaken. But I love that they're introducing Chris now, because I don't think in The Lightning Thief, he definitely wasn't in The Lightning Thief, but he just shows up in the second book as like a demigod that they recognize from camp. But for him to actually be here now, like, they're placing the crumbs for in season 2 when Luke's gone evil and he has his Princess Andromeda boat. Chris is gonna be there and they're gonna be like, it's Chris. So love that. And I love that they didn't, you know, like all these background campers that we know from the books, like Selena, Beckendorf, like Katie Gardner, the Stolls, like Will, even all these sort of background people, they haven't like casted them yet, right? Because they would most likely want to wait as long as they could to like cast those people, so that like if you cast some random kid in season 1 to play like the Stoll brothers, it's like not, it might not be great for later seasons or whatever. But for them to cast Chris, I was like, that's like dedication. He doesn't even say anything. Does he say anything? I literally don't even know. And they don't even refer to him as Chris. He just like is just like, he just does play Chris. Sorry, that was so long, but yeah, I love it. And so basically, it's Chris, Luke, and Percy, and they're just all sort of doing stuff together. And then they go to dinner. Wait, is Chris Rodriguez a son of Hermes? I didn't think that he was, but maybe he was. I don't know. Anyway, then they go to dinner, and Luke basically introduces the thing of like burning their food for the gods, because not that they like the smell, but because they like the smell of begging is the line, which that is the tea. And so he's basically like, if you burn the thing that you care, like the thing on your plate that you care most about, the gods might just answer your prayer or whatever. And then we immediately cut to a scene later that night of Percy alone in the woods with a little like tin can fire, and he's burning his little blue candies that his mom gave him, and he's talking to his mom. Like, there's so many things about that. First of all, him burning the blue candy, this like symbol from episode 1 of like his mom and this little gift that she gave him, which is obviously like the thing that he cares most about at this point because it's like his only symbol of her. And so he's burning this, first of all. Second of all, he does it alone, like later that night in his own privacy, which is so detailed too. And third of all, this ritual sort of thing that is like reserved for the gods and like made like saved for trying to speak to the gods directly, he does it to try and talk to his mom because he just like places her on that pedestal of like she's like as great as the gods and even beyond, which is so sweet. And yeah, it's just an incredibly emotional scene. And he's talking to her and he's like, you might want to sit down, but I think I've made some friends. Which, with the foresight of his friend, he's talking about Luke. I mean, he's talking about like Chris too, I guess, but like mainly Luke. And for him to be like the first time he's ever felt like he belonged and that he's like had real friends other than Grover is because of Luke. And then knowing that Luke betrays him at the end of this season, it's entirely too much. And then wait, hold on, I have it written down. Where is it? Then he's talking about how like he is gonna get his dad's attention so that he can like find his mom and save her. And he says this line exactly. He says he can ignore me, but he doesn't get to ignore you. I'm gonna make him come down here. And like during that part, the music gets like very dark and it's like low-key, like it's giving like a villain origin, but whatever. It's giving, you know what it's giving? It's giving that scene in Tangled Ever After. Is that what it's called? Tangled Ever After, or Rapunzel's, what is it called? Rapunzel's Adventure? Whatever, the Tangled TV show, when Varian sings Let Me Make You Proud Reprise, and he says, anyone who stands or stood in my path, they're going to pay. It's giving that, but like Luke's not trying. Oh my god. I'm messing up my names, but Percy's not turning evil here. Anyway, moving forward. So then like on his way, so this is like during night, he's in the woods sneaking off to like do his little fire thing. Then he heads back, and then as he's about to walk into the Hermes cabin, he gets stopped by Clarice and her Aries besties, and basically they bully him some more and they try to give him like a swirly, which is so funny. And then of course he like makes all the toilets explode, iconic from the books, love it. And then so like toilets explode, they all get like knocked out, and then they like scurry away, and this is when we're introduced officially to Annabeth. She's like just like standing by the doorway, so chill, and he's like, it's you again, because like he recognizes her from the infirmary, and she's like, yeah, I'm Annabeth. And he says like, what are you doing here or something, and she was like, I'm just been waiting to see if something like this would happen, because Annabeth is obviously plotting, trying to wait for this demigod that is supposed to be like her key out of camp that she's gonna go on a quest with and finally be able to prove herself. And seeing what she saw, she thinks that it's him because like he's obviously doing some crazy stuff. And so they have this conversation. Percy's asking her stuff and she's just like, yes, and like he's like, are you stalking me? And she's like, yes, like so deadpan. It's so Annabeth. I love it. Yeah, it's such a perfect intro to her. But yeah, and then after that whole scene, then we go into capture the flag. Immediately, Luke, okay, he's back with Luke in the morning when they're doing capture the flag, and there's this little conversation between Percy and Luke about, like, Annabeth, and he's like, Percy's, like, a little unsure about her, but then Luke is talking about how, like, she's his little sister, like, Percy's like, so whose side are you on? And he's like, hers, always. And it's so cute, because he's like, I can't even do it, dude. The way he betrays them is so, like, it's so hard. I also just like to throw in here, I love them explicitly saying, like, whose side will you be on? Hers always, she's my little sister. Because as we know in the books, there's a bit of a weird gray area in Annabeth and Luke's dynamic, because it seems in The Lightning Thief, obviously Annabeth is 12, Luke is 19, and she has, like, a little crush on him, which is, like, fine, whatever. But later in The Last Olympian, he asks her, okay, at this point she's 16, he's like 23, and he's like, did you ever love me? And she's like, oh. And it's just like this weird, like, why? It's like too many years, and it's so weird. So I love that they're just straight up, it's platonic in the show. It's platonic. So I love that. And then from that point on, they do capture the flag, but Annabeth is sort of testing Percy. Percy doesn't know it though, but Annabeth, like, gives all her directions to the rest of the whatever team they're on. And then she's like, not you, Sunshine, you're coming with me. And so her and Percy walk off alone. He, like, trips in the woods. It's so funny. Oh, and then she adjusts his armor, which is something that happens later in Battle of the Labyrinth. The crumbs. I'm obsessed. And then she's basically like, you just stand here and, like, wait for something to happen, just, like, guard. And he just sort of, like, hangs out. We're not meant to assume, but, like, we can maybe assume that, like, Annabeth is standing there and she's watching with her invisibility cap on, just waiting to see, you know, like, what happens, what Percy does, because she's waiting to see if he's, like, a possible child of the big three gods and all this stuff. And so she's obviously watching. Clarice comes and she's, like, again, just so cool. And then he defeats her and her Ares siblings. He snaps her spear. She lets out a, like, cinematic scream. It's huge. It's crazy. And then, like, Annabeth takes her hat off and she's like, and Percy's like, were you watching me this whole time? And she's like, yeah. And then she is like, sorry about this, and she pushes him into the water because she knows, she's, like, put it together by this point that he's Poseidon's son. And so, because, like, obviously, like the way no one else put it together, like, he made the toilets explode, guys. Like, come on. She pushes him into the water and then he gets claimed, and the claiming scene is beautiful. It's like, it's shaky cam again. You know, I love a shaky cam, and the music is so good, and, like, Chiron's voiceover being like, son of Poseidon, whatever. It's amazing. And then that's how the episode ends. And yeah, it's just so good. So, themes, y'all know I love a theme. Main themes from this episode that are really honed in. First of all, glory, because, like, obviously Luke's whole little, like, monologue thing was about glory and, like, trying to make yourself feared and all this stuff, and so, like, glory and what that means for demigods, and, like, are they doing it just to get their parents' approval, or, like, are they trying to prove that they're, like, better than the rest, all this stuff. It's sort of like the whole demigod thing. Like, I think most demigods have a little bit of hubris, because I know that's, like, the whole, like, Athena fatal flaw, But hubris is sort of just like a demigod trait, I think. But whatever. And then the other theme that I think is really like evident in this episode is how kids at camp are taught to like fear but also like respect and just like be so like, and not even just the demigods, just like everyone is like so in fear of the gods that they're like taught to respect them. And like the whole thing of like, what does that really mean for the camp? Because it's this whole interesting thing of like Luke, obviously after going out on his quest and seeing the world, doesn't really agree with that take anymore, and that's why he becomes evil and does all the stuff that he does, because the gods are put on this pedestal, but they're horrible people, so they should not be, and that's why he does everything. But at camp they're just taught to like follow the gods, you know, give all your offerings to the gods. You know, we've got like these honorary cabins that you like don't step foot in, like respect the gods, don't even say their names, like names have power, all this stuff. Yeah, like it's just this very interesting like thing that even Camp Half-Blood, they are putting this like ideology of like respect the gods above all else. It's like, maybe you shouldn't be teaching that. whatever. Yeah, so that's episode 2. Literally the only bad thing about this episode is just it's very fast. So yeah, that's all.